Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our webinar with TPF Sports on how to bring your clients, employees, and creative processes together. My name is Liana Tallarico, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at OpenText Hightail. And I'm joined today by Hightail's #1 fan, Mark Barley of TPF Sports. Mark is based in Australia. And Mark, would you mind just telling us a little bit more about yourself and about TPF Sports?
Sure. So TPF Sports is a branch of the TPF Group. The TPF Group has offices in Hong Kong, China, Vietnam, and Australia. I myself have been part of TPF Sports on and off for 6 to 7 years, and I've always worked, or traditionally worked, in the fulfillment space. So what fulfillment is we do a lot of the merchandise packs or member packs for Australian sports teams, and that's essentially an end-to-end solution. So we do the design, or we can do the designs for, we do the production of, and we do the distribution of those member packs.
All right, so as we jump into the discussion, I do want to set the stage for our audience. Mark, in previous conversations we've had, you've described some of the challenges being around just the pure number of assets that your agency manages on behalf of your clients through that whole creative development process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. We still, basically any design or production was done with our studio team as well as the client, and the challenge is that most of it was done via email. I mean, towards the end or before we onboarded with Hightail, we had sort of started doing some annotations, but the consistency wasn't there. So we were getting email responses where we would have to put a list together and then either annotate the PDF or explain or show screenshots for the changes that needed to be made. And there was a lot of misinterpretation and a lot of risk on our end, because if we get a logo wrong, that has huge repercussions in the market, not only for the team but for us as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would imagine, one of the challenges is just the pure number of assets that you're dealing with amongst just multiple clients. You had mentioned at one point that you guys service up to 100 clients or maybe even more. But then in addition to that, like you said, you're working across a distributed team with creatives in Vietnam, other teams in Hong Kong, and all of that communication happening over email really opens up some doors for, again, miscommunication, as you called out, throughout that whole creative process.
Yeah, that's correct. It could even be that changes were made, but they weren't included in final art that was sent off to the production team, or a small text change in amongst 100 other changes gets missed. So from our end, we mostly got it right, but there was always the risk of not getting it 100% before it went to production.
Yep. And Mark, you had reviewed with me, there was a specific breaking point where your team at TPF Sports said basically, okay, we've got to do something about this.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of frustration around the process, and when you're dealing with a design team that's in another country, there's always the risk of misinterpretation or miscommunication is exacerbated by having English not as somebody's first language, and trying to explain the details of why something needs to be changed can be hard. Effectively, the tipping point for us is that we had a few items go to production that were not exactly what the client wanted, and the cost of reproducing goods that are incorrect got to a point where we needed a solution that was clear and concise and reduced that risk. There's always going to be a risk, but we needed some checks and balances in a user-friendly platform where all of the comments were housed in one space, and it wasn't up to our team to go back to find find a specific email where a comment was made, but then not updated.
So you needed that audit trail basically so that you can see exactly, okay, these were all agreed upon things and the information was transferred appropriately.
Correct, and I mean, itemized approval as well was a big part of what we were missing, because we would send a deck or a presentation or a file of all of the artwork that was being used, and all we would receive in response is either updated from the design team or approved from the client. But what we really needed was to make sure that each item had its own approval process, to make sure that all of the changes had been made, not only for the deck in total, but for each individual item.
As you started to move into that decision-making process of, okay, we need to come up with a new creative process, essentially, for our teams and for our clients to work within, how did you kick that off?
Well, the first point is pretty accurate. I mean, we knew what the requirements were, but from a process perspective, we really needed to break it apart into the different departments to ensure that each one was providing the information and actioning those tasks appropriately. So that was really our first step, even in our email and PDF process, was to split that out and to make sure that everybody was accountable and responsible for their tasks. The next step for us was really to look at a platform on which we could facilitate our process, or at least define or rejig our process to suit the platform we used. And I mean, we had a look at a few different platforms, but for us, the main thing that we defined to be sort of the main point was ease of use. So if it's easy for us to use, and it's easy for the client to use, and it's easy for the design team to see what those changes are and what's required, then it was going to be an easy onboarding process, and we could then define our process around that platform. And I mean, it's pretty obvious what path we chose to go down, but a big factor in that was the ease of use. So, I mean, gaining the trust of internal advocates, you've got there as point number 5. That was probably one of the bigger challenges we saw, getting everybody internally across the line, managing the client's expectations and getting them on board. I mean, as long as it was easier to use, we were sure that they would be happy to use it. But when you've got a team that's fairly set in their ways on how things have been done, that was probably one of the first hurdles we faced, was getting everybody on the same page, and but not only that, getting everybody excited about it. So, a lot of the training videos or intro videos that Hightail provided were really helpful for us to show internally, to say, look how easy this process could be.
I know that when you first brought on Hightail, you piloted it with a few clients at first, right? And then you expanded it from there. But for those first few clients, what was their initial response when you brought them a new creative process?
No, the response from the clients was resoundingly positive. I think previously, I mean, we intentionally picked who we wanted to pilot it with, and it was, I guess, opposite ends of the spectrum. So we wanted to engage with clients that had been both, I want to say notoriously easy and notoriously difficult, but those that we knew would embrace the change, and those that we thought may have some pushback.
Mm-hmm.
But what we found across the four that we piloted the platform with was that everybody found it to be much easier than doing things over email. And from there, I mean, we had our own issues internally with the process while we were still redefining how we worked. But once we internally got all on the same page and then presented that as a united front to those clients and stepped them through the process and showed them the videos on how to use it, yeah, the response was very positive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we decided to roll it out across all of our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you had mentioned to me in previous conversations that you actually now require with even new clients that you're bringing on that this is the creative process that you use. Talk to us a little bit about how you onboard those new clients.
Effectively, it's brute force, to be honest. We still show the training videos on how to use Hightail, and we give those links to them. But yeah, effectively, this is what our process is.
Mm-hmm.
And if they need any support or guidance on how to use the platform, we run through that with them. But yeah, from an onboarding perspective, we don't sort of do too much work in that space because this is the process that we use.
And typically the response is still positive.
Yeah, yeah. Because for new clients, it's still a refreshing and new way of doing the artistic or the design process. I think everybody is happy to get less emails or to have to work from their email inbox. So it's a very easy transition for us when we and again, it's all prefaced on as long as we explain the process and how it works and why it's better than doing it over email. It's a very easy conversation to have.
I wanted to go over some of the benefits that TPF Sports revealed after they onboarded Hightail in their new creative process. Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the savings in terms of time that TPF Sports experienced?
Yeah, sure. So the first year after the trial, when we got everybody on, or all of the clients on board, we saved around the 500 hours per or for that year in revisions based on the previous year, which I mean has huge financial implications, but it also means that our design team can now do more. It really helps with the expansion of the business and making sure that we can take more clients on. The improved team morale. I mean, getting a team excited about a new process is difficult at the best of times, but really seeing the change in the way that the clients engage with us and our internal team, cutting out a lot of that frustration and the back and forth was a huge. It's almost an immeasurable benefit, but it just makes such a difference internally when that process is clear, concise, and there's less there's less frustration. So improving that team morale was a huge benefit for us. And then yeah, as you've said, the client appreciation for clients to see that we're innovative and always looking to improve and make their life easier as well has been great. And I mean, you don't get new clients from that, but you increase the chance of repeat business when you're easy to deal with.
Thank you again for tuning in to hear from TPF Sports on how they were able to streamline their creative process. If you have any questions about this interview or would like more information on Hightail, please feel free to send an email to my email address, which is on the screen. Thanks again and take care.